Good morning and happy Monday. Welcome. Today is March 23rd, 2026. We are here for the work session with Mark Pfaffinger and other support services. Mark Pfaffinger is our support services director, and we have our 20 plus years of energy efficiency at Larimer County, and we are in the Commissioners Conference Room on the second floor at our Administrative Services Building. I'm Larimer County Commissioner Jody Shabbat-Nally, Chair of the Board of the County Commissioners. Joining me at the conference table is Commissioner John Kafalis and Commissioner Kristen Stevens. Also joining us is our County Manager Lorenda Volker, and we have other folks in the room. I will let Mark Peterson introduce them as we go forward, and I'm assuming this is still the Mark. Ken Cooper's here, but I was wondering, is Mark going to?
It looks like Mark is not going to make it, so I think, Ken, this is going to be your show. It's about energy and energy
that's why I wanted to ask, because Mark's listed. So Ken Cooper is our facilities director, and a fantastic one at that. Tremendous work for years. And so I'm going to just turn this over to you, and thank you all for being here today. I look forward to this presentation.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. Ken Cooper with the facilities team, also here with Barb Andrews, our newest member of our group, and has been with us now about a year. She came over after a really neat relationship that we had with her while she was the key accounts manager for the utilities for City of Fort Collins. So we're going to take you through basically a timeline and then kind of just give some highlights of things that the county has done for many years. And you've heard me talk about this a good number of times, right? Whether it be related to new capital construction, whether it be related to the operational, pieces of our team. But this will begin, and Barb's been able to compile a lot of really neat information that will begin to show sort of the results of that. The 20 plus years of investment that the county has made continually through staying current. Being able to reinvest in our buildings mechanically. Particularly we're going to talk about today, And so, unless there are any questions, I'll kind of lean over to Barb, and we can get rolling on the presentation. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Welcome, Barb.
Thank you. Thanks, Ken. Can you hear me okay? Everything okay? Barb Andrews, Energy Manager, Larimer County Facilities. Thank you for giving us this time today. As Ken said, I have kind of a neat history with the county. I did serve as the Fort Collins Utility Key Account Rep, and so I had a lot of good previous information from working with Ken and his staff about all the good things that the county had been doing, and so felt like I kind of knew the organization. So this was a fun project to work on because it gave me just a little more context about our history and some of the good things that we've been doing this whole time, even beyond what I remember. So we're just going to jump in here and kind of start with a timeline of some of our early key projects. And we could go back, further past 2000, but we're going to kind of focus on the early 2000s here. In 2004, the organization, Larimer County, really made a pivotal decision, and that was to invest in a building component replacement program. And so up to that point, we had been doing replacements periodically and on schedule, but we hadn't designated actual funding towards it. So this was a pivotal, a very foundational piece for us, not only in being efficient financially, but from my seat, this gives me an opportunity to look at some of the projects that we're slating out, 1, 3, 5, 10 years on down the road, and looking to see if there are other options that we can start researching and looking into. It helps us be proactive versus reactive, and so that's always a more efficient way to operate. And I was surprised actually to learn that not every organization has this sort of plan in place, and so I was very proud to learn that we do this and we really live by this. So it's a great story for us. So early on, you can see that we adopted some renewable projects. 2007, we put geothermal at our current landfill administration building. And so that was kind of interesting to see that we were adopting some renewables at that point in time. And then We put solar on 2 of our locations pretty early on in 2010. So Oak Street, this building here, and then again out at the landfill. So I won't go through each one of these, but this is, you can kind of see where we start doing some window replacements and some turf replacements and that sort of thing. So those were some of our early key projects. And I wish we could put all of them on here, but these were kind of the bigger ones that we thought we'd highlight. So we kind of move into more of our recent projects. You can see sort of the activity is kind of on an uptick here. We really started doing LED lighting replacements and working with our partners at Efficiency Works Business, which is out of Platte River Power Authority, to get some rebates for our LEDs. And now all of our buildings are LED, and so that's kind of a nice thing to be able to say. In 2022, Newland Sutton, who is our landscape technician, developed a turf replacement or a water master plan. And so that's focusing on turf replacement, irrigation system upgrades, and kind of partnering with more of our contractors out in the industry to kind of make sure they understand what our goals are. And so then the big thing here on this timeline that we're very anxious to learn about is our geothermal with our emergency services building. So that will be our first full electric building in the county assets. So that's.
I'm gonna, if I could pause you
Yeah.
right there, just for members of the public and just for everyone listening in, can you just expand on what a full electric services, what that all means in the geothermal? Could you just expand on that since it is the first one, and either one of you, can we just maybe dive in just a little deeper just to help explain, what does that mean?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. Yeah, you might recall about a year ago, with that capital project coming on board, we went through and did a pretty exhaustive side-by-side, which could mean side-by-side study, what we typically do, what we would have done in just strictly electrification of the building, and then in addition to that, geothermal to support full electrification. And became very clear that particularly by getting grant money that helped pay for, really it did pay for the investment that we made. That was about a $2 million bogey, I guess, right, premium to do that mechanical in that system. But we ended up getting about $2.5 million in grants, or at least either loosely related to or directly related to that decision. And so a very positive thing. If we had gone full electrification without doing geothermal, our greenhouse gas would have been much higher, the carbon footprint for it, because of what's still considered to be, I guess, a dirty grid for Colorado or for the supporters here or providers here. But by going with the geothermal, it reduced it. I think it's about a quarter of what we would have gotten to at that point. Not only that, but the operational pieces of it, the cost of it operationally is cheaper. The usage of the utilities is going to be cheaper. We won't have any gas contributing to it, natural gas that is. And so I'm giving you a long answer to a short question, but that's a reminder of kind of how we got there. Not every site will afford that, so we're going to do this as we go forward. But we were very fortunate. It worked out great. David and Chad are here from our team, and Abby is here as well from the Office of Sustainability. But David is managing the project for us for facilities, and so we continue to track that. We're going to be able to do really good reporting off of that building. We're going to put what's called an E-gauge. Barb will get into that later a little bit. But we're going to have that in that building and be able to separate out the components of the utilities. And so I think we're going to be very happy, not only operationally but also the concern for the environment. I think will be much improved because of that mechanical system that we have. So,
Just curious, if this is our first all-electric building, is this a first all-electric building for pretty much for you, Ken, and for others in our staff? I mean, if it's first for us overall at Larimer County, is this first for a lot of folks, and maybe really good chance to learn, expand, and understand?
Very much so, yeah. We've got some consultants on board, of course, that have been down this path. But any of us in facilities, we don't have a building. We don't have a building that is in line with this. The geothermal that Barb mentioned that we put in at the landfill back in '07, very small building. more of a supplement, really, and likewise with the solar. But this building will be, exclusively that, and it's a neat opportunity. I'll be honest. The geothermal piece of it has us a little bit, I guess on edge when it comes to the performance of it. But we've done a lot of conversations and review with different groups that have been involved in it, including our consultants, obviously on this side. But we found that if there's a pond involved in it, the performance of it is a little bit iffy. We don't have that here. These are just wells that are driven in. So we're expecting good performance, and we've actually done some to allow for, if and when that building were to be expanded, there's an ability for us to reach a little bit. So the initial well design and implementation is a little more than what would have been required. And so that should, I guess, sort of act as a stopgap if we did have some issues on the front end. We don't expect that, but it will also allow for the expansion of it. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. I
you.
appreciate when you pause and do that. Lorinda, I see you'd like to maybe add to that.
Yeah, I want to give the team a whole lot of credit because this really took them out of their comfort zone. They did a lot of research, made a lot of phone calls, talked to other organizations who had done this work. And I want to say thank you for being willing to just jump out of your comfort zone. You did, the whole team did in a big way here. So it's quite an accomplishment, reported in one block on a slide, but a lot of work went around that. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I echo those comments, Lorinda. That's one of the reasons I paused to ask, because I did think I consider this a really major accomplishment, and I appreciate everyone doing that. And I think it's a nice big gold star on Larimer County that, we came over a lot of barriers and adjustments to do this, and I just
Great.
appreciate everyone in the work. So, colleagues, did anyone else want to say anything? All right, well, we'll move on then.
Very good. Thank you.
So over the course of these 20-plus years, we've done far more than just 50, 55, 50-plus energy and water efficiency projects. But I think it's worth noting that we've also been good, stewards of our taxpayer money in that we have this building component replacement program, but that doesn't mean that we've just sat back on our laurels and just kind of banked on that. We've gone out and done a lot of work with grants and rebates and tax credits and that sort of thing, close to the tune of $4 million. And so we worked with Efficiency Works Business, the Colorado Department of Local Affairs, City of Fort Collins, Colorado Energy Office. And so I think it just shows that Larimer County's very responsible, fiscally as well. So.
I think I'll jump in really quick with that. Barb mentioned DOLA, and David has arranged for DOLA and also the Colorado Energy Office. We've got a presentation when the building opens up, which will be roughly August, September. And the local International Facility Management Association, so IFMA, the local chapter is going to allow us to do a presentation through our consultant, PEC. And David has asked the folks at DOLA and also from the Colorado Energy Office to come and they're all planning to be there that day, which I think will be really neat. They'll be able to get a tour, and which is typical for IFMA. But then the presentation piece will highlight not just the mechanical systems, but also the grant dollars that we got from those organizations, which was significant. DOLA, you'll recall, was a full $2 million on a $2 million ask, so we were very excited about that. It wasn't specifically and strictly about the geothermal, but obviously it was very helpful. Helped, kind of inform the rest of the project, and then we got grants that were specific to electrification and to geothermal, and those will be talked about as well. So yeah, so thanks, David.
Very exciting, very interested in that. So when you say that'll be before July or August?
It'll be likely in August, September. So,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
So I think this kind of depicts what the county's commitment is to the investments that we've made. So these are, as you can see from I tried to include a little bit of a dollar figure on some of those projects, and they're significant. And so we don't want to just put things up and then let it go. We do our due diligence to monitor and make sure that the systems we're implementing are doing what they say they're going to do. And so we've kind of gotten more and more involved with these studies, and so that's kind of one of the things that kind of helps keep us on track. Back in 2010, we implemented a system called EMON-DEMON, which is more geared towards our optimization of our HVAC systems, and so Chad watches that pretty closely. In 2017, we did Energy Star Portfolio Manager and the Brightly program called Energy Manager. And so we take those two platforms and roll up our utility bills, all of our utility bills, so that we can look on a monthly basis. So Ken and Chad and I get together once a month, and we use that platform to make sure that our buildings are tracking the way that we think they should be tracking. So in 2018, the county participated in the Fort Collins Utilities Demand Response Program, and that was a system where they would send out a email notification to just say, hey, we think maybe we might be coming up on a peak event, so if you want to, you can kind of ratchet back some of your usage. So we participated in that. And then as our EV chargers have come on board, David and I watch the ChargePoint platform quite closely just to see what's being used the most. And of course, it's the fast charger here, but we're learning a lot through that. And then our newest addition to this whole tracking system is what's called the eGauge. And so that's we've been kind of, it's fun to talk about that one because we've partnered with a local company here in Colorado, and I'll, I guess, move into that. Do you have any questions about anything that we're tracking, monitoring, anything like that?
I don't think so at this point. Commissioner Kafalis?
Thank you. How much money are we saving?
That's a good question. I would probably have to do a little research on that. So we use for our reporting, we use our 2021 baseline. And so I can tell you kind of what our annual energy cost runs for all of our buildings. We're looking at about an average of, 2.5 million is what we're currently spending on our energy cost. But to really look at kind of what our cost savings have been over the course of those years and using that baseline, I can certainly get back to you on that.
I think we would all be interested, and certainly the taxpayers would be interested as well.
Absolutely. I think that's a fair question.
Thank you. Thank
So-
you, Barb. Thank
Yeah, I
you.
think that's a great point. I think we all be interested in any
Sure.
information that we'll all look for today. So,
You bet.
Commissioner Stevens, did you have
Absolutely.
a question?
Well, one of my questions was sort of on so is like the FCU demand, the Fort Collins Utility Demand Response, is that like ongoing? So we're clearly still tracking, and when there are peak events, are we, that's trickier in a building that's open to the public than it is in my house, and so what does that look like? And are there spaces where we can't do that, like the jail, for example, and other spaces where we can do some of that to help with that?
Right. Very fair question. Fort Collins Utilities is not able to continue that program. They don't have the manpower to do that. It was a very manual 1 to 2 person, system that was in place. But I will say that we've been watching through Platte River Power Authority's peak demand page. We can see that the peak hour typically falls anywhere from 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 7 o'clock. So it's 1 hour, and that's historically when that has happened. Is sometimes it's 5 to 6, sometimes it's 6 to 7. That's generally. Once in a while, it will happen between the hours of 2 to 3, or in the summer when air conditioning is really high. So those are things that we're continuing to sort of see where we might be able to incorporate an energy master plan to see what we might do for our own sort of demand response. So.
Are we subject in every jurisdiction that we're in to some of the things like time of day usage or is that not done for commercial?
Coincident peak is kind of the time of day. So that's the commercial version of time of day. And so most Most of our utilities have a facility demand charge, which is the highest 1 hour usage of your building, and you get a charge based on that. And then there's a coincident peak charge, which is the highest 1 hour that is placed on the Platte River Power Authority transmission and distribution system. And so, for example, in this building, we have a energy usage, like a KWH charge. Then we have a facility demand charge, and we have a coincident peak charge. And those last two are really designed to support their transmission and distribution systems. So each utility, will do that just a little bit differently, but generally speaking, because we are all under Platte River Power Authority, that's kind of generally how that works.
Thank you for explaining that.
Lorenda?
I guess just to clarify, so that's why we monitor what their peak hours are, so that we don't end up with those charges. So we're managing it on our side as well as watching our consumption just in general on the grid. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're watching it. I don't know that we could ever not have those charges, but that is why we watch that very closely, is to kind of see when those might be happening, and then see if there's anything that we might sort of ratchet back on at any of our locations to see if we can help with that. So it does end up being a sizable cost. For 1 hour, it can be in the realm of $18 per kilowatt. So it can run, 1 hour can run us $3,000 to $4,000. So it's worth paying attention to.
Thanks for explaining how you manage that.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? All right, we'll move along here. So I kind of joke around with Ken that this might look like his EKG if I ask him if we could put solar on all of our buildings in 1 year. I don't know it's the solar portion of that gets him. I think it's the time frame that might cause those big spikes, but we'll work on that. So this is a depiction of the actual EKG, or it's like an EKG of our building, the E-gauge. And so what we're seeing here is everything in red is the energy that we are pulling from Fort Collins utilities. You can see the green denotes the usage of our fast charger. So you can see when that's used, how that influences our building's energy use. And then those white domes down at the bottom indicate our solar production. And a couple years ago, we had a company come out and just make sure that our solar system on this building was working properly. They checked all the panels and the inverters, everything is working as it should. It's not a lot of production, but it's what the system said it would do. So it's working. And it does offset our cost a little bit on that. So, that's a really helpful tool, and one that we'll be putting up at the Emergency Services Building so that we can see the impact of the geothermal to the full building load, and what kind of benefits we're seeing from that.
As a quick follow-up to that, Barb mentioned the level 3 charger that we have at this building, right? That's the only one that we have in our portfolio. But it basically, on a weekend when we don't have people in here, and things are set back and so on, if somebody's out there and uses that for a full day, it basically doubles the use of electric in this building, which is pretty amazing, just from from 2 users, at that station. So, and on a typical day, it's about a third, or close to it, of the total use. So that's going to be something we'll be tracking closely, going forward, and even from more of a sort of global across the region, or global across the state, or the country. Very interesting to see, that kind of an impact from those chargers. So anyway, we are moving forward with some other level 2 chargers that we've got many more of. And we track those as well, but the level 3 are the ones that really put a dent in the in the electrical use. So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. I find that really interesting. And if it's electrical use, are they? They're not paying for it up there, the electric. It's just how does that work? If it's spiking and they're not coming to the office. If it's off hours. How is that offset, or is that just something that we're charging for it?
Okay. It's we've looked at adjusting it. Thus far, we haven't done that, but we are still kind of kicking it around. We've talked to different groups that have level 3 chargers elsewhere, in this little, in our community. And we are operating at a slightly less per kilowatt hour of charge. But we're not to the point where we feel like we're losing money on it, and so we haven't quite gotten to the point where we feel like it's a hurdle to, to charge that, to make that higher. But it is very interesting to see the not only the cost of it, of course, which electricity is still pretty cheap. It's not terrible, but the actual delivery of it, and if you think about it, a much broader look from a community standpoint. I think the providers are really, if there's a bunch of these that get put in at a certain time, it's going to have quite a demand on the grid. So anyway, that's not related to our charge and cost, but it is something to look at, more broadly from a service provider standpoint. Yeah.
And I see Commissioner Stevens' hand, if I just might build on my other question. So as we're watching that demand, and you're watching what Platte River Power is earning, are we watching demands like that across the whole system and know where certain centers, chargers are or something? And do we get access to some of that so we know where some of the capacity is? As we're going forward, and I
Right.
think about this hot, dry summer, and we have going to have a demand for people to stay cool. I'm assuming, we've always thought about, heaven forbid, knock on wood,
Right.
rolling blackout or demand issues. Is that something that we've thought about or planning? Or I know it's part of maybe some of the stuff that our Office of Emergency Management's looking at. I'm just curious about that. And then Commissioner Stevens has a question.
Yeah. Barb, you want to?
Yeah, we are watching the buildings to see kind of what those demand charges look like. This building is particularly of interest because it has the solar and everything kind of all combined into it. But yeah, that's one of the things that we want to get a little bit better handle on is what does that look like across the whole county asset structure. So just to kind of see where some of those facility demand charges are high, where those coincident peak charges are
Okay,
higher.
thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yeah, so somewhat related is, with PRPA sort of bringing on the turbines and doing some different technology to try to, transition into more renewables. I mean, it seems like costs will likely go up, and that's something that are you kind of in constant contact to kind of figure that out? And I think about, I don't know what the increases are expected over the next 5 years or so of that, but that's clearly something that you're kind of figure out as you work through this. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, we've been watching. We're in very close communication with all of our key account reps from the different utilities to kind of understand what their charges are looking like. And then we meet with Platte River Power Authority about once a quarter and just kind of get an update from them on kind of where we sit with all of that information. And we're watching it pretty closely. In April, they are supposed to transition into a different market. And so it'll be very interesting to see what that does in terms of the amount of renewables that are coming into our system, and then how that's going to impact our reliability and how that's going to impact our cost. So those are all things that that we stay pretty close in contact with. I work with Abby and Heidi sitting on the iCare team and the electric energy efficiency electrification team. And so all of those conversations becomes part of all of those conversations. So really watching that pretty closely.
Yeah, I think, it's an interesting time in that space. It's very, things are very changing, and it's very fluid, and it's hard to sort of keep up. So I appreciate you kind of, it's hard to, keep costs low and keep, kind of moving towards more renewables when the market's fluctuating so much right now.
Yes, it is. Everything is changing very quickly. So that's where our partnerships come in very handy. Just making sure we're talking with our friends at PRPA and all the utilities and working together as a team with that. So, yeah.
Barb is enjoying her new role because it doesn't require her to be the bearer of bad news when it comes to utility rate hikes, which was an annual deal for her in the city of Fort Collins. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So all of these investments have really made an impact with our building reporting. So I know you're all familiar with benchmarking. The state has a program where all commercial building owners have to report either their energy use or their greenhouse gas emissions. In facilities, we're reporting the EUI, the energy use intensity. But we walk pretty closely with Abby and Heidi in the sustainability department as they watch more of the greenhouse gas emissions. And so really, we're sort of walking parallel towards the same goal. We're just kind of doing it in a little different fashion. So once a year, we have to report to the state on our buildings that are 50,000 square feet or larger. And so what we're seeing in this slide is the 11 buildings that we have that meet that criteria, that building size. And then in the yellow there, like I said before, Ken and Chad and I meet once a month and we kind of track the building performance. And so this is basically looking at the EUI of these buildings over 2025. And so you can see that the property use type is designated by the state. So they say if you have a prison or an area of incarceration, your 2026 to 2029 goal, and I apologize, that should have said goal, should be a value of 108.3. Ultimately, what we're reaching for is that 2030 EUI of 86.9. So that's how this table reads. And as you can see, we have, we're doing really quite well with all of our buildings that have to report here. So what's in green is meeting those targets. There are 2 buildings that are sort of in a lighter green, and that just means that they're slightly over that goal. And so with maybe some behavior change and maybe some different setbacks and that sort of thing, we could get to that. But ultimately, we're trying to reach to that 2030 EUI. And as you know, that's again taking into consideration cost and timing and what we can replace and when we can replace it and that sort of thing. So I wish everything was green, but we'll just keep trying to get there. So any questions on this one?
Commissioner Stevens.
Are there any penalties for not meeting those goals?
The county is considered to be a public building, and so we do not have any fines or fees placed upon us because of the taxpayer component there. So while we aren't fined or assessed any of those charges, we are expected to report, and so we do.
Yeah, no, just curious. And I'm glad we're reporting, and I'm glad we're still working towards those goals, even some of them that are more aspirational and that may feel a little harder to achieve.
Yeah.
But, you know, also working in an environment where we're seeing, I mean, I bet we had to turn on the air conditioner a lot quicker this year than we thought we were going to.
Right.
And, you know, so as things change, you know, we have to, you know, adapt, you know, and because we're a public building, we can't be like, okay, go cool yourself out, you know, go run through the sprinkler or whatever, you know, our parents used to tell us, right? I mean, we have to keep, you know, things comfortable, and especially in the jail, which looks like we would be meeting it anyway, and I'm sure that's because of some of our new spaces. All right, just curious about that piece. Thank you.
Yeah.
As a quick follow-up, obviously the summer that's ahead of us, right, is going to be pretty challenging, but we feel really good about this. You know, it's kind of the linchpin of what we wanted to present today because of all the dollars that the county has spent, you know, year over year. We really are in a good position. One of our key measures for facilities, excuse me, is getting to 80% of the 2026 to 2029 EUI number. and we're pretty much there, and have been there for, the last year or so. So we're in really good shape. It's the result of the partnership between, the budget and commissioner's offices and the county manager's office and our team to kind of roll it out and to carry this forward when it comes to ways to save money and save energy, and ultimately to meet these targets, because we're certainly feeling good about that. So obviously the 2030 targets are significantly tougher, and we'll have to monitor that. We don't know if those numbers are going to change a bit, with outside influence and so on that will happen between now and that date. But we really, it's this page, as much as any of them, is really an opportunity to kind of sit back and feel good about it as a county organization, because there's a lot to be grateful for here. Barb mentioned the component replacement plan that the county implemented over 20 years ago. That really, consistently feeds Chad and the group to be able to go forward and stay current, and in some cases go above current, with some of these, mechanical systems that we use. And so it's got us in a very good shape to be able to operate efficiently, save money where we can, and still have very comfortable and, well-represented buildings. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to imply, I mean, I think we're doing a great job here, and I love that we're pretty much hitting the metrics that we need to be hitting, and then some, so good work to everyone, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Fantastic work. Thank you.
So this slide kind of follows along that same suit. Buildings that are 10,000 square feet or larger, up to that 49.99 square feet mark, those are not required to report to the state. However, the county and Ken and Chad and I still monitor those buildings' performance and use that same methodology that the state provides to sort of help keep us on track with some of our smaller buildings. It's a little more challenging, but we're committed to, constant improvement, and so we've got a little work ahead of us, but that is kind of why we're using this methodology here, because it does serve as a really good North Star for us to stay on track.
A couple of these stand out. The blue spruce buildings, because we don't have a sub-meter on those buildings, we pretty much prorate the electric across two facilities, right? And they're pretty close to the same square footage. One was actually operating in the green on these EUI reportings, and the other wasn't. We decided it really wasn't, fair to charge all the electric for one building, across two buildings. So we sort of hurt ourselves when it comes to reporting of it, because we backed one out. We spread it across, we kind of prorated it to spread across the square footage. So those both need some help, now. One, before that, 1501 was reporting, more favorably. The other one that's a neat success story is 200 Peridot. That's the Loveland building, right? That was built in 2018. That thing was up operating at about 80 on the EUI scale, and you can see now it's more like 55. Chad went through and did a pretty exhaustive study, worked with an outside engineering group, and was able to identify some things. And of course, with that building being so new, we thought it would be one of our high performers, right out of the chute, and it wasn't. And it was relatively simple changes that needed to happen, but it wasn't simple in terms of what was obvious, as you look at the numbers. And so did a great job. Chad did a great job of following up on that, and then making the adjustments within the mechanical system that, I'll be honest, I didn't think was going to be enough. Certainly wouldn't adjust, to this kind of percentage increase or decrease at this point, with the operational efficiency there. But this kind of reporting that Barb is sharing today gives us good information to be able to target those kind of things, and then be able to reach out and start to really dig down and figure out, what might be happening. That was a unique situation because it was so new. Some of our older buildings, built in the 70s and 80s, much tougher. This wasn't low-hanging fruit, but it had a system that was, adjustable, measurable, and made it available to us to make some key adjustments that improve the efficiency of it. The other buildings are not quite as easily done that way, but we still have good information to be able to, begin to look at it. So, yeah, thanks, Barb.
Can I ask a quick question about, you said we have no sub-meters on the both Blue Spruce buildings. And I'm trying to understand, those are older buildings. Is there some investment there to be able to track it more, or to find efficiency, since we probably won't have the capital lever to really
Right.
redo those buildings? So I'm wondering how we.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the e-gauges that Barb is implementing now are in the tune of about $3,500 a piece, right? Really cheap. So we can put those in there and begin to track those things, like we showed you for 200 West Oak, where it shows the EKG, she called it. And we can do that now at our buildings to go through and submeter. I recall it was going to be $100,000, but I don't know if that's an accurate number. It's close to that. It's a big, big number. Am I close? Not close?
You mean to put a new meter on
yeah,
that?
to separately
To
meter.
separate that out, you
Yeah.
have to, it's very costly.
Yeah. So that's why we hadn't done it, and we finally just said, well, it's not fair to charge all the electric to one building and none to the other. So we did it just based on square footage and kind of split it ourselves. Didn't tell anybody, we just did that, but for reporting purposes, but to actually submeter the building, very expensive, so, yeah.
Thank you, that's interesting, and if I might build on that, though, would we try to find the one that we know is not performing as well as the other, and look for any measures, if we're not submetering, at least some idea of how we could help with the efficiency in that building, just
Sure.
for some ideas for that?
Yeah, very good question. We don't feel like one is operating at much different than the other. They're very similar spaces. We've done some new mechanical work in some of the other, in 1501 during the remodel for human services, and haven't seen, significant, it was an efficient process and system before. It's a little more efficient now, but we don't have any kind of low-hanging fruit in those buildings in either one of them that we're necessarily targeting. But still know that, we've got some work to do, and I think in some cases, that's why we made our goal to be at 80% of reaching the targets, within this next 4 years, roughly. Because we knew that, that you sometimes are spending millions of dollars to get this much savings, right, ultimately. And we just don't feel like that's the right way to, to tackle those things. But where we're doing it on the front end of projects, obviously the emergency services project is a good example of that, where we can do things on the front end. That was a significant premium, $2 million, but because of the grants, again, we were able to, to make that happen. Loveland, like I said, the Loveland office there on Peridot, we thought that would be very efficient. Wasn't, but now is. So there's good news there within those projects, so.
Great, thank you.
Okay. So we'll kind of move into some of the water efficiency now. So Newland Sutton is our landscape technician, and he's just really been doing a wonderful job. As I mentioned before, in 2022, his water efficiency plan kind of focuses on these three topics of reducing non-functional turf, upgrading existing irrigation systems, and then working with our contractors so they understand. You may have noticed the project that was done out in front of this building, and what that was is an opportunity to dig out a very water-intensive turf. And he has implemented, he says it's an experimental turf type, but it is supposed to be lower water needs and should be able to handle the traffic a little bit better. So that's something we're going to be watching. But it's that kind of thinking that's helping our water use quite a bit. And he put in the rose garden out front, which is a wonderful addition. So he's doing some really great things with our water work.
And if I could pause it just real quick, because I had been walking through to my vehicle as they were people were asking why the trees go down and stuff. Sound like the trees were struggling. Maybe we got new trees now were planted, or is that just to kind of help with a less water-intensive tree? I'm just wondering.
Yeah, I don't think it's a simple answer, but there's pieces of each of those that are at play. We've got some trees that are, that have been struggling, but in most cases, we're making those changes because we're trying to reduce back water use. So
Great.
it is neat because Newland mentioned this recently, that the restrictions that'll go into place, which almost certainly are coming right from the providers. They are immune. The drip systems that we use for xeric are basically immune from that. So we won't see, dead xeric, areas like we would if we had turf that was reliant on that. So that's good news. We're reducing back. I recall it's in the range of about 15%. for total use, water use for those buildings that we've targeted, so significant savings, so.
Wonderful, thank you.
Probably just got in front of your presentation.
Commissioner
no, you
Kafals
just
has,
led right into
I'm sorry,
it.
Commissioner Kafals has his hand raised. I think he has a question.
Thank you. I have a question and a shout out. I'll start with the shout out for Newland. I always appreciate when he's out there.
Yeah.
We have nice conversations. I often feel like I want to get down on my hands and knees with him and, do some of the work that he's doing, but so far haven't done that, but we'll see.
I don't think he'd stop you.
Yeah, just give him just thank him. He's always so pleasant, and he's very knowledgeable, and he's just a nice,
Good.
all-around person.
Yeah.
And actually, all the facilities folks, Rob and others, are just great. And that one fellow who's always cleaning things, appreciate that as well. My question is, how are we going with this new turf project right out here on Oak Street? How will we determine? I mean, we can measure the lower water use because of the grass seed mix that's in there. And how will we determine whether or not it can withstand the traffic, especially when the farmers market is there and all of that?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question and probably something we need to talk to Newland about. I think he's
Okay.
watching all of that very closely.
Okay.
Because he did say this particular one is an experiment. And so he's commented to me before that we'll see how it goes. So I think it's one of those things that we're never really sure exactly how well it's going to withstand that, given all the different elements. He's very, you're right, he's very passionate and knows a lot about his industry. He's always very quick to make sure that we understand usage and sustainability is also very dependent on the year and how that rainfall comes in. So
Yeah, he's
watching that very closely.
he's pretty risk averse, like we all are in facilities. So he's not rolling the dice and hoping necessarily that it's going to work. He's done a lot of research with the local vendors and with the city and so on to get a good handle on what we could do. So I hope that helps in terms of the likelihood of success.
It does. What is it? For the sake of folks who are maybe listening, what is the grass mix that, I know it includes fescue, what other grasses? And also, I thought it was interesting, it wasn't seeded, there were little squares or rectangles of sod. So I'm curious what the grass mix is and what local vendors actually provide that kind of grass as sod. Because most of the time you have to seed it.
Yeah, I'm not sure of the exact name, but we can get that for you, unless you know, Chad.
I don't know the name. The reason for sod is just for a quicker establishment. Seed just takes a lot longer, a lot more watering.
You get on the mic.
So
I think if you wouldn't mind coming next to Ken and just saying that for the record and putting on your mic, thank you.
And it would be helpful, for the public's sake, I'd be curious to know where you can get sod that is already, because we've tried to put in seed our front yard, and it's kind of hard to compete with the bindweed and everything else.
correct. My name is Chad Fry. I'm facility supervisor here. The understanding of using sod is just for a quicker establishment instead of using, extra water for the seed. So that's why he went that route.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, sir. Okay,
So this is just a little bit of his work here. He has, in his plan, he's picked about 6 different locations to focus on. And so that's our Blue Spruce campus, the Loveland Administration campus, this campus at Oak Street, and then Midpoint Drive. There are 2 locations out on Midpoint where we have a little bit more non-functional turf. And so he's working on removing that and trying to get things kind of figured out with that. But what we're looking at in this table is that he, again, will say you really need to do an average to get a good baseline because of the fluctuation in different years. So he took from 2020 to 2022, he took a 3-year average. During that time, we figured out that we used about 9.2 million gallons for the year at these 6 locations, I guess 5. And then the cost on that was roughly about $60,000. So what I think is kind of interesting is to look at 2023. And again, it was a wetter year, but with his projects and implementation of some of his ideas, We've lowered that gallon per use, so it's about 6 million gallons. We've cut that cost down to about 34,000. And then 2024 was a little drier, so obviously those numbers go up a little bit. And then 2025 was a wetter year, so you can see how they're starting to drop. So I think this is interesting because it does, it supports what he says about comparing year over year over year. And so with that 3-year average and then looking at each of those and really kind of understanding the rainfall for that, it's very interesting. I love talking with him. I learn something new every time, but he's doing a really good job with our water efficiency. So,
Thank you.
so on to the fun stuff here. So, with all of our investments and the tracking and everything, the county has received some really nice accolades. When we were partnering with ClimateWise, that was a program out of Fort Collins Utilities, and we were a platinum partnership with that program for several years. And then in 2012, we received LEED Gold certification at the Alternative Sentencing Department. And then in 2016, a few of our buildings received Energy Star certification. And then most recently, thanks to Abby's good work, we joined the Colorado Green Business Network. And it's what's kind of fun to know about that is that our first year of reporting projects and our activity, we received silver recognition. And in talking with some of our colleagues in the industry, they were actually surprised to see that we got silver recognition within our first year. So really fun to hear some of those oohs and ahs. And Abby and I meet about once every other month, and so we've committed to a gold award next go around, which is 2027. So Abby, I've put it out there. We're committed now. But fun to see some of those accolades. So again, this has all been really good context for me, understanding the organization and some of the good things that the county has done collectively. And so having that opportunity to get that context, to do that reflection, helps us sort of look to what's coming in the future and where we need to sort of steer this ship. And so we're going to be creating an energy management plan similar to our facilities master plan and our water plan. And with that, we're going to be hoping to add more submetering at places like Blue Spruce and even down at the ranch. We have a building down there that has actually 3 buildings on 1 meter. So we'll be using those submeters to really dive into how we're performing. We're going to be continuing to try and get assessments and audits done on some of these buildings that we know we're going to be, having to do some improvements on and looking to see what we might consider, either like for better or maybe a whole different technology. So building assessments, audits, retro commissioning will definitely be part of our master plan. And then obviously working with sustainability, Abby and Heidi with awareness and education to staff, and not only to help with, helping the county buildings save money, but maybe it's something they can take back to their homes and help with their own pocketbooks. So we'll continue to support Newland with his water efficiency plan. And then, like I said, we're going to try and get gold recognition for our Colorado Green Business Network. And then just trying to see wherever we might incorporate geothermal, more solar, that sort of thing. We've got this solar system is 15 years old, and so the lifespan on those is usually about 20, 25 years. So we're coming up on maybe looking at what's out there and how we might update that. So we'll also be looking at the emergency services building with that geothermal to guide us on where else we might see possibilities, if that turns out to be something that's of real benefit, which I think it's going to be. So. And I think that sort of concludes our 20 plus years of energy efficiency.
Wonderful, some great information. I'm sure my colleagues have some comments and some questions like I do, and we'll also see what Lorinda would like to add. I'll start with Commissioner Stevens.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Barb and Ken, for the presentation, and Chad and David and Abby. You know, the work you're doing is really, really great, and it's really great to share that with the community too. One of the interesting things when you were talking about the lifespan of the solar is there was just a study out, I don't know if you saw that, but that supposedly solar has a longer lifespan than they thought it did, a lot of solar, that people were saying in the 20 to 25 year, and they were saying, well, it does lose some effectiveness, like it still is effective into years 30 and 35. So that was interesting. I just saw that on the news the other day. But just want to thank you all for the work you do. It's really great to have this presentation and kind of know what we're doing. You know, as the eye care, those kind of programs are like, you know, we don't just expect this out of the community, we expect this of ourselves. And so I think it's really good for us to reflect on how we can do better and ways that we can efficiently, because there are cost savings, but, you know, it's also the right thing to do, to use less energy, to use less water, to make sure that we're doing our part for the planet and reducing greenhouse gas emissions and all the other emissions that are associated with some of this. So, thank you. Thanks again for the work, and really happy to have the update and just keep plugging along. We want the gold this year. We want in an Olympic year, we're going to go for the gold. So I love that. Thank you all.
As a quick follow-up to your comments, Commissioner, and also to the question that Commissioner Kafalis asked, like how much are we saving? We are going to be careful and talk probably more in percentages, right? You know, with that baseline of about $2.5 million, you know, out of our cost per square foot. We'll be careful not to extend too far in that in terms of, you know, making it sound too flowery, because obviously, like the slide Barb went through on the water reduction, you know, that shifts by the year we've had with rain and snow in a big way. And so, you know, clearly there's things that we've been doing that continue to invest in our buildings that continue to save us money and save us energy costs. But we'll be careful when we give those pieces back. It's kind of why we didn't focus on that today, is because it does get tricky when you're, you know, there's outside influences that clearly are at or above, you know, anything that we can control. But we'll do our darndest to get you the best information. So,
Thank you. Commissioner Kafalis?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Much gratitude. It's always nice when we can start the week off with a bit of good news. So I greatly appreciate all of the hard work and collaboration with the facilities folks and our eye care folks and all of that. I think it's important that the county serve as a model. We walk the talk as best as we can. You know, with our sustainability and climate smart office. So that's great. A couple of questions I have, if I may. And the first one is, a couple of years back, there was some discussion about when we finally do close the current landfill on Taft Hill and we reclaim that land. There has been, and there's some interest from private sector creating quite a solar array on top of that. Is that still part of the conversation? That would be my first question.
I believe Lorinda would like to take the first stab at that. Thank you.
I think the short answer is yes, that is still part of the conversation, but that is outside what Ken and his team are doing. They're looking at our buildings and our facilities. Our solid waste folks are looking at that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Thank you. And then my other question, it's two-part, I believe, and that is looking back at some of the climate smart pie graphs that we've received about building energy usage is one of our biggest contributors to greenhouse gas emissions. So in addition to looking at cost savings, are we able to see how we lower the piece of the pie that is coming from energy used in buildings, and in particular, how will we take into consideration when Rawhide coal power plant goes offline in 2029? I imagine that's going to affect things quite a bit.
It will. Yeah, you want me to, I'll take a stab at those
Sir.
questions. So, first of all, yes, we do track that, working with Heidi and Abby primarily about it. It is very tricky because when you take the percentage of impact that our buildings have on the total footprint of the county, the big majority of the county is the landfill, right? I recall it's 80%. I think that's accurate. So now you're taking a much smaller percentage when you've got fuel and fleet and so on. We're in the ballpark of 11% of the total. So when you do that, you look at 11% of total greenhouse gas coming from buildings. So if we shut down every building and never come back, we save 11% of our footprint, right? So we're not doing that. So now you're taking a percentage because you look at what could we save, based on the usage of what the building contributes. And, you've seen here how difficult it is to get on the EUI to get from 75 to 68, to get us into the green like that. So you're now looking at a percentage of a percentage of a percentage, and in some cases, spending millions of dollars to have that kind of a change. So it's a challenging question, and I hope it at least helps you understand that it isn't something that we're going to be advancing or trying to advance because we don't feel like it's the best use of not that we don't, I misspoke. We are trying to find opportunities to advance where we can and where it makes sense financially. But to go back and retrofit buildings to get, a slice of a slice of a slice to have an impact on the greenhouse gas, we don't believe that is something that the county ought to be, moving forward with. So I hope that's okay. I'm not trying to turn that into too complex of a question, but it's a very tough question.
No, I appreciate that, yes. And I'm wondering, I would think that most of the electricity that comes through Platte River Power Authority is renewable, but when the coal-fired plant Rawhide goes offline, how will that change things? Or will it?
Yeah, and I missed that part of your question, I'm sorry, but yeah, we clearly are following that. In our goals, we've got like a 62% reduction, but that's almost entirely based on them cleaning up that grid, right? The vast majority of our costs, of that piece of it, not cost, but the impact of it, is because we're reliant on that grid. If they don't meet their corporate goals to get to that, our ability to change our goals, gets worse. So I guess that's as quick of an answer as I can give you to that, Commissioner. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Kafals. I want to go back to the comment about when we talk about how much are we saving and the costs and even comparing. I think this year especially, it's the warmest on record, and thank goodness I've been able to cool the house without turning the air conditioner on. I just kind of open it up and then shut it down, and
Sure.
It's a lot more work, but I don't have to use the energy. But 90 degrees or close to 90 degrees this past weekend or last week was quite remarkable in a lot of ways. So I'm assuming this year is kind of an outlier.
Right.
And so it would be really hard to maybe compare that, especially, which I should have done over the weekend, but I decided to just take a little time to just be quiet for a little bit on Saturday, but I was going to deep water all of our trees and to help them fight off, the warmth, but also beetles and things like that. So if we took the outlier out and we compared maybe drier years to wetter years, is that something we could also do an analysis on, just to kind of get an idea with the moisture content, how we're doing comparatively? Because I think you're absolutely spot on that this year definitely we really can't compare to anything, but I'm wondering how that looks.
Yeah, we certainly track it as a component of what we spend, on the actual utility usage. I mean, we might get a lot of rain this summer and we'd get lucky, right, and be okay. I think the last half of last year even, we didn't have a great snowpack. It was, a lot of wind, a lot of heat, in the early part of last spring, if I recall. And then later in the summer, our projects were impacted by it on a capital side because we had a ton of rain, in some cases. And so it really saved us when it came to, the daily temps and so on. But clearly if, the way snowpack is 52%, I think, of normal, right now. And it ought to be continuing to hang in there until I think it's April 13, if I recall. It's somewhere in there when they start to go the other direction. If we get a lot of snow and rain in the next couple of weeks, it'll help a lot. So, I mean, it's very much of a juggling act, and I'm not trying to dodge your question. But we clearly watch those things. We do watch our setbacks, our set points on the buildings, right, to try to adjust to those things. But in most cases, and Chad may have to give more detail to this, but in most cases, if we put our setbacks into a position where people are uncomfortable, right, you're getting into a thing where you've got it at 82 degrees in a building or whatever, the efficiency that you lose on the workforce is pretty considerably, it outnumbers the few dollars you'd be spending, on utilities like that. Doesn't mean we won't be tracking it, we will. And we're hoping and praying for, a really wet, next 4 or 5 months, right? But it'll be something that we're keeping close tabs on. And so clearly this will be, the likelihood of this being a poster child for like, that was a great year energy-wise is really low. It's heading very much the other direction. But I don't know, Chad, do you have anything else to add to that?
No, you nailed it right there.
Thank you.
So a little bit of art, science and some art to kind of navigating. I appreciate that. And then when you talk about creating an energy management plan and the ongoing work with the water efficiency plan, we also have our strategic plan, which I know Abby's connected, and it sounds like this is really embedded with that plan. And also we have our water master plan for a county. I'm assuming that also has deep connections and overlapping. And I kind of wanted to point that for the public to understand what I've really been impressed with is, especially the last couple of years, we have all these plans in different departments, but the cross-jurisdictional department working in across the county, especially on something like energy use, which is really universal for everyone, the working together on these plans and not having multiple plans that are kind of maybe working at cross purposes or competing priorities. It's under the assumption for what I'm hearing, these are all dovetailing or overlinked or have common staff or goals and facilities working together and talking across these plans all together?
Right, yeah, we're very much of a subset to the sort of the greater good of those plans. And so the pieces that Barb is focusing in on are the things that we can control, in facilities. So they're the impacts that we're, determining when we have, whatever it is, a new building or, changing up the operations in a building or improving the mechanical in a building, things like that. Those are all subsets to what, the bigger, broader, community plans and strategic plans that you're talking about, so.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
I appreciate that very much. I kind of said that mostly for the public. I assumed that was happening. I could see it kind of happening. And I agree back to what I think Commissioner Stevens had mentioned this, like a friend told me, I was planning some, May is Mental Health Month, and I was, trying to plan some activities for, as a commissioner to share which I was planning to go out hiking, but my friend quickly pointed out, okay, are you practicing what you're preaching right now? And I went, yeah, I am. Probably, I'm not as loud and proud about it as I'm going to be, but yes, I am. And so I think that's important that, we talk a lot about our plans and our climate goals and a sustainability plan, but if we're not showing how we can, as a large organization, do this, it's kind of not following kind of that integrity of speaking and doing the same thing and living what you're talking about. So the one quick other question, I wanted to go back and make sure I understand the talk about the 50,000 square foot buildings performance and the 10,000 square foot performance, some of the challenges, and I made me think about the new facilities building or the new fleet building. When everyone's, I don't see that one. Maybe that was on the list, but that had some efficiencies in it, and maybe a lot better than the old site, of course. But also the smaller ones. Can you talk about that building a little bit more, and maybe an exemplar of why a smaller building is kind of a little more challenging?
Tougher, yeah. It's really, I think, in most cases, the short answer is economy of scale, right? You just, it's much easier to impact something that's 100,000 square feet. You get better performance out of something that's bigger typically. And you can make some tweaks that have a bigger impact than you do when you're at, 8,000 or 12,000 square feet. So, yeah, that building is a big challenge for us. because of all the overhead doors. So that can be real tricky, you know, and particularly in the first year. You know, just like the Loveland building I mentioned, where, you know, that first year we thought we'd be in pretty good shape from an energy standpoint, and we weren't operating there, and so we had to dig down a little bit. I think the behavioral piece of it for a new building, particularly with that many overhead doors and, you know, bays like that, you know, you're heating and cooling, you know, the outdoors in some cases when those things are popping open. And so we've been working closely, you know, with the folks out there. And we're not where we want to be quite yet, but I think we made some progress and you know, continuing to find ways to improve that. In some cases, it's even been bringing the engineer back into the building and looking again at, you know, it could be an air curtain or something like that that wasn't in the original design. We're taking a look at that, I think, in a couple of those cases out there at Rickenbacker. And so it's a complex question that we're tackling from different perspectives, I guess, so.
And I don't mean to keep asking complex questions, but I think you're right. You have behaviors, but you also have efficiencies. You have the building and the uses, and they're all just like you talk about one county, right, and across the state. But all these buildings are very unique and have different uses, and they have different special characteristics and people in them. And so I'm sure you feel like you're managing multiple counties trying to do their own thing. So I'm wondering if it seems like that to me.
Yeah, we've even talked in the design team. We almost had sort of a pact that we all signed, because it's very easy, you know, for this last building, right, David, the emergency services building. It's very easy in August of '24 to talk about something that's going to open in September of '26, and to be committed and, you know, be sure that you're going to be okay with what you're agreeing to, right, that kind of a thing. But in some cases, you know, you're drawing people into a project process that isn't real simple, and we dabble in it, you know, pretty regularly, but our clients don't, right? Our customers often are, you know, this is a one time in 20 years or 25 years. And so what sounds like it's doable and what sounds workable to folks when they get right down into it sometimes isn't. And so it's not uncommon to commit to something that's like, whoa, that's not what I meant, right?
Yeah.
And so we're trying real hard to do as best we can to explain, this is what we're talking about, this is the decision we're making, and we want to make sure you understand this is what it'll look like. Particularly, I think the bay doors that are at the new Fleet campus, we talked about the recovery, because when you pop those things open, it goes from, you know, 68 degrees down to about 40 in a hurry. And so, you know, in a decent winter anyway, not this year. But in most winters, that's a significant change. And now to reheat that space in the same way with summer, you know, recooling, those are tough things to sort of understand. And so we've tried really hard to get better at, you know, at funneling that down and making people fully understand what we're committing to, and so that the mechanical system can support that, right? Because if they're committing to this and the mechanical system supports it here, and then all of a sudden they expect it here, it's not going to be jumping up, right? So I hope that helps in terms of the design process particularly.
Yeah.
And then obviously the back end performance of it, you know, we talked pretty confidently about what it's going to operate like out there, you know, at the new emergency services project. But we don't know that yet. You know, we have really good information that says it'll be great. The models all show that it's, you know, going to be favorable. But until we, you know, flip the switch and turn the key on, it's going to be, you know, there's a little bit of uncertainty to it. So
Unknown and uncertainty seems to be the two words of the year, or last year for sure. Well, Ken, appreciate, as always, exemplary work. I have been so impressed from day one, getting to know you, and the work of you and your department has just been outstanding and very exemplary, and always innovative and trying to do efficiencies and improving all the time. I just can't say enough about you and your leadership, and you do a lot of these things quietly until we have these sessions that we get to catch up and hear all the great things. And I appreciate you being on board and kind of sharing some of your background, and really liked how this presentation rolled. Thanks for all your work. It's nice to hear from you today. And of course, David and Chad and Abby, thank you for being here today. You guys are some of the unseen heroes doing all this work and helping us advance our goals. And I don't know if you all get enough credit working with this team, because it's things we take for granted as consumers or clients of the building, but also working here. There's a lot going on behind the scenes to be where we're at and what's happening. And I just think this is great that we get to show what outstanding assets you are to the county and the work that you do, and this is really important for overall goals, but also just to provide comfortable buildings for productive workforce and for our clients who come and visit. And I just thank you for the really informative, and I really
Thank you.
love this presentation today. Thank you all for being here. Lorinda, you get the last word today.
I love these support services work sessions because these are the people that support the people who work with the customers directly. And so I feel like in a lot of ways, we pull back the curtain, we let people see the way that, in this case, energy is managed, and it's managed responsibly. I'll also say a thank you for continuing to support what they reported back in 2004 was a new thing the county did, which is the building component replacement plan. Having that plan funded, looking at it every year as part of the budget process means that this team can be creative and can try something new. They can try a pilot program in a building. They can see what works without fully committing. And then they have the resources there as it's time to replace that component to look at how we might do it better. So that is a really important piece of this entire facilities puzzle. And I know Ken has talked about it. You talked about it a bit too. I think it is unique. You think that every organization has it, and you come to learn that they don't. And so it is a very important tool that helps you do your job. So thank you for using it wisely. I think you spend this money as if it's your own, which is really an important value. We don't go out there and spend it quickly. There's a lot of evaluation, a lot of weighing. When there's a decision to be made, we bring that back to you if it's not obvious. And so I think you all have found the right balance, and I appreciate the work you do with Abby and the sustainability team. I know the iCare team is very active, and the work that you do is important as well. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Lorinda, well said. And again, thank you all. Great way to start
you.
off the week, really,
Yeah, thank
quite
you.
frankly. A great way to start the week. And so, I might have more questions. I'm going to sift through this again, maybe come back and watch this. And it's just always great to kind of reinforce you had a lot of information. So I wish you all a wonderful week. And at 11:18, or actually 11:19, we are adjourned. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Thank you all.